What have you done for me lately? It's a question that can be asked so often when it comes to professional sports. Ignoring all the accomplishments that a player might have in the past, ignoring records that they might have broken, what is most important and what people are seeing on the court, on the field, is what that player is doing night in, night out. And at times, it can make it hard to recognize what a player is doing and how the contributions that they're making are not just determined by what they're doing on the box score every night, but the way that they are actually contributing and having a Hall of Fame career. And so often it can be hard to sit back and recognize that. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and today we're talking about recognizing greatness as it happens in the case of Mike Evans and Derrick Henry. There are only 8 players in NFL history who have scored more receiving touchdowns than Mike Evans. Those are Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Chris Carter, Marvin Harrison, Larry Fitzgerald, Antonio Gates, and Tony Gonzalez. That's the list. Sitting at number 9 with 103 receiving touchdowns is Mike Evans. More than the likes of Antonio Brown, Calvin Johnson, and Steve Smith Sr. And the funny thing is, touchdowns aren't even what Mike Evans is most known for. As a result of his large frame, he is able to be a great end zone threat. But what he's even better at is 50-50 balls. And that has led to him having 1,000 yards every single season of his career. And he by far has the record, and each and every season he adds on to it by now, of most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. No player has started out from year one and been a 1,000-yard receiver every single year of their career for as long as Mike Evans has. And this season he's going on his 11th straight. So not only is he going to add on to that record, that would tie him with Jerry Rice for most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons in NFL history. With Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver of all time. And Mike Evans' name is right up there statistically with all-time greats already. And he's only 31 years old. He's still got some years left in him. Currently, he stands at 24th all-time in receiving yards with 12,500 just about. But if he's able to get that number up, say he has 3 more 1,000-yard seasons, that puts him at 15,500, which would be 4th all-time, overtaking Randy Moss and sitting just behind Terrell Owens. Mike Evans absolutely has a case to not just be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, but a historically great wide receiver. For Derrick Henry, he's one of just 8 NFL running backs in the history of the sport to rush for over 2,000 yards. And he sits at number 7 all-time in rushing touchdowns at 104. And very realistically, he could at the bare minimum overtake Walter Payton at that number 5 spot. Walter Payton has 110 right now. Derrick Henry, to overtake him, would just need 7 more. And then that would put him at number 5 all-time in rushing touchdowns. And then it's a little bit more dicey after that. Adrian Peterson has 120. Marcus Allen has 123. And then LD and Emmitt Smith are way ahead at 145 and 164. But Derrick Henry could very easily be 5th or even higher all-time in rushing touchdowns. And this is a guy who is the antithesis of the modern running back, where we put an emphasis on, the speedy guys out of the backfield, not really trusting a running back to still perform at the age pretty much after the rookie contract. We don't expect them to perform. But Derrick Henry still is, and he's on the second team now, and playing about as well as he ever has. And there was a moment where it looked like he was going to have his second ever 2,000-yard season. And there was another year like that with the Titans, where he was on pace to have 2,000 yards right after he just had done it. And no running back has ever achieved that 2,000-yard mark twice. But Derrick Henry has been close to doing it, not just once, but twice. He's been close to doubling that record multiple times. So that is some all-time context of what both Derrick Henry and Mike Evans are doing and how they're going to rack up historically. They're putting up great numbers right now, but it's really impressive given the historical context behind those numbers and how they've been able to do it so consistently. And that word there, consistency, is huge, especially for a guy such as Mike Evans. This is someone who has never been at the top of the league in terms of receiving yardage. But what he has been is consistently one of the best wide receivers in the league year by year. And that's huge, and that's a big reason why we don't always consider the historical context behind what a player is doing. You look at a guy like Cooper Kupp a couple years ago when he had a Triple Crown season. He was just 17 yards away from tying Calvin Johnson for the most receiving yards in a single season ever. And that got a lot of attention. But when someone is just, steadily having 1,000-yard seasons year after year, but not being, the guy at the top of the leaderboard, that doesn't always get noticed as much. But when you take a step back and analyze that player's career, it becomes a lot more impressive. Because they're putting up numbers comparable to some of the greatest of all time. And you take a look at it and you think, hey, why is this player who we don't really consider to be the best, one of the best ever, or even one of the best in the game currently, why is he up there? And that's because of consistency, especially with a guy like Mike Evans. Derrick Henry, on the other hand, was the best running back in the league for a couple years. And in a way, sometimes that can overshadow what they're doing historically, where Derrick Henry is all the way up on that rushing touchdowns leaderboard and was so close to becoming the only player to have multiple 2,000-yard rushing seasons. So there's some, not just statistics, but historical context on how great both Mike Evans and Derrick Henry have been and the record-breaking caliber of players that they are so often. And in the modern NFL and really sports in general, especially with the rise of social media, players can take a lot of criticism for pretty much anything, right? It might just be a single low light on a game where they had 10 receptions for 193 yards, but people might clown them for one play where they made the wrong route or something of that sort. But sometimes it's important to take a step back and appreciate not just what a player is doing in the moment, but to look at all that they've done and how excellent of a player that they truly are and how they're going to go down in history as a legendary player at that position. And so often that can fly by without you even realizing it. And that's why sometimes we have to take a step back and recognize greatness as it is still happening, as evidenced here by Mike Evans and Derrick Henry. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nash Roberts.